Do you feel overwhelmed by your emotions and at the same time feel bad about them? Well, I'm gonna tell you, you shouldn't feel like that. Today I had this client of mine and she felt really bad about her experiencing a lot of emotions. Bad in a way that she thinks that there's something wrong with her, or that not having like the tools or the tools of how to deal with her emotions. So she was judging herself for that experience that she had with all these emotions, and at the same time she was blaming herself, which of course is not going to give us a good feeling when we try to deal with this flood of emotions that we experience. And what we really need in those moments when we feel overwhelmed with emotions is actually to be comforted in those moments. And when we judge ourselves or when we blame ourselves, we are not really comforting ourselves. We're not really nice to ourselves. We're not really accepting of whatever we are experiencing in that particular moment. So in order to feel better, we have to refrain from judging and blaming ourselves when we experience emotions. And oftentimes it's very understandable why we get overwhelmed with so many emotions. Like in the case of my client, she grew up in a household where there were never conversations about feelings or emotions, and literally her dad always told her that he had no empathy. So she always learned to keep them inside and only get emotional when she was in the comfort of her own room. So she never learned in an interpersonal relationship to get emotional, and also didn't have the examples, of her parents showing and learning how to deal with those kind of things. So while bottling up for so many years these kind of emotions, you could compare it to like a hot boiling pot with soup, and the lid has been on it for a long time, but then when you remove the lid, you will get overwhelmed with the steam, from the soup. And that's the same when we start this healing journey. We start to get aware of the things that we might not have processed yet in a healthy way. The things that we have experienced but weren't really processed in a healthy way. Like we didn't really sit with the feelings or the consequences of that when we were younger. And then when we get more aware of things, when we reflect more on things, and in her case, she's now in this kind of state that she's really aware of all the things that had happened to her, and how that results in her feeling this way now, but also the difficulties she's having now with navigating and processing her emotions at the moment, which makes it really understandable for why she all of a sudden is feeling so many emotions right now, and actually shows that there's very little reason to judge herself or to make herself feel bad for feeling and experiencing these emotions. It's actually a good thing that she's now feeling and experiencing these emotions right now, so the healing can start. And blaming herself for having them, like experiencing the emotions right now, is also not a good thing at all, because while blaming ourselves for that, we take on all the responsibility, which is not fair, because we were a child, we were dependent, we were not with enough knowledge and awareness to know how to deal with certain situations, or how to communicate about these things. So in a way, as a child, you're more kind of like at the same time part of it, but also more like a victim, in certain scenarios where we didn't learn how to talk, how to show, how to communicate, or how to process our own emotions. Because we learn all that, from our first examples, which are our parents. And often parents haven't learned it themselves either because of their parents. So then you have this intergenerational deficiency in, knowing how to deal with emotions, how to talk about them, how to navigate them. So who is then to blame if things like that are being passed on from generation to generation? And also, like, the more you go up in generations, like, the more focus there was on material wealth and having a roof over your head and having enough food and all these practical stuff. That's what the people before focused on. And like this emotional awareness is getting more and more present and ingrained, like in the younger generations. People from the younger generations are becoming more aware of how much there was a lack of that in the past and how it's affected them in their mental and emotional well-being. And also, when you look at it in a broader scope, it's not educated enough even in our school system or even in our culture. Everything needs to be going well. In school, the focus is mostly on the mental capacities with children, and there's too little focus, in my opinion, on how to learn more about the emotional world of our being. Like, that's also a part of who we are as a person, of our human beingness. We don't only have the mental capacity, but we also have the emotional capacity, which is really important for how to form relationships, how to choose our direction in life, like what makes us happy, what makes us unhappy, how to parent. All these kind of things have a huge impact on people's well-being in the long run. So it's clearly understandable for my client to feel overwhelmed by these emotions if she never learned about them, and also if she's never seen it around her. But to judge and blame herself for it is not going to help. And